Before the world pulls us into its restless current, unread messages, relentless notifications, looming deadlines, there exists a fleeting moment we often overlook, the moment of awakening. In that moment, brief as it may be, we are granted a choice in how we will live today. Not to endure, but to lead. Not to react, but to guide. Morning is not merely a segment of the day. It is a silent oath. I will live by my own design, not by the world's demands. We need little to begin. Just a deep breath, a small decision, and the clarity to choose our stance. Let morning no longer be a hurried beginning, but a ritual of will. This is not merely a video, it is a reminder, a tool to shape your mind before the world tries to shape it for you. 1. Begin with gratitude, even the smallest kind. Something strange happens every morning, though most of us don't notice it. We open our eyes and breathe, a gesture so seemingly mundane, yet a miracle not granted to all again. The Stoic understands every morning is a privilege, not a given. To wake up, to feel daylight slipping through the curtain, to hear birdsong, to even sense the lingering pull of sleep. Each is proof we still have a chance to mend, to live better, to act in line with the values we hold true. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his journal, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This is not empty encouragement, but a method, an instrument for beginning the day with the right disposition. In today's world, we often begin the day by checking our phones, reading emails, or thinking about our to-do list. In doing so, our minds are pulled out of the present moment, drawn into a current of anxiety, urgency, and the sense of not enough time, not enough energy, not enough achievement. The Stoic chooses a different path. They don't begin with reaction, but with awareness. They spend the first few moments not working, but sensing, I am still alive. And that alone is reason enough for gratitude. Gratitude doesn't need grand beginnings. No major success, rare opportunity, or extraordinary triumph is required. On the contrary, Stoicism teaches us to be thankful for the smallest things, for they are what life is made of. A deep breath, a warm glass of water, a body that still moves, a blanket that kept you warm through the night. These are easily overlooked, yet they are the foundation of a complete life. To practice gratitude each morning is to recalibrate the mind from a state of lack and chasing to one of sufficiency and control. And from that state, we begin the day not with anxiety, but with steadiness. One who begins with gratitude is less shaken by petty troubles. They respond more calmly and tend to act with greater virtue, in alignment with their inner values. Stoicism doesn't ask us to deny hardship. On the contrary, it teaches us to face reality. Life is not easy, and each day may bring adversity. And precisely because of this, to be grateful for still having a chance to live, to face those very trials, is what keeps the spirit strong. Another key element of Stoic gratitude is intentionality. Gratitude doesn't arise on its own. It requires space to grow. And so the Stoic makes it a ritual. Not religious ritual in name, perhaps, but one treated with utmost respect. Some sit in silence for a few minutes. Others write down 3 things they're grateful for. Others simply breathe deeply and smile at the thought, I still have time. For the Stoic, The morning is not a time to rush through tasks, but to reconnect with core values. And gratitude is the first thread in that connection. When you are grateful, you judge less. When you are grateful, you forgive more easily. And when you are grateful, you strive to live better, not because you lack, but because you feel nourished from within. Stoicism also reminds us that gratitude must be followed by action. Recognizing life as a gift each morning means living in a way worthy of that gift, not through lofty promises, but through discipline, kindness, and deliberate choices in even the smallest things. To be grateful for another day means not wasting it on what doesn't matter. It means using that day to speak what needs to be said, to do what must be done, to become who you are meant to be. The concept of memento mori in Stoicism, remember that you will die, may sound grim, but it is in truth a call to awaken. When you remember that life is finite, you cherish each morning as if it could be your last. And when you live with that awareness, gratitude becomes vitality itself. It compels you to act with urgency, with reverence for each passing moment. In the modern world, where everything moves fast and people constantly feel they haven't done enough or become enough, gratitude is a brave act of resistance. It's a way of telling the world, I don't need more to feel fortunate. And when you begin your day with that thought, your mind clears, distractions fade, and you enter the day with rare inner steadiness. In the end, to begin the day with gratitude, even if it's just for a breath, a glass of water, a body that still moves, is not hollow habit. It is the essence of Stoic practice. One who understands this won't let the world blur their presence. They begin each day not as someone swept away, but as someone who steps forward, deliberate, steady, and awake. 2. Set a clear intention. One of the key differences between those who live with purpose and those who drift is that the former begin each day by setting a clear intention. For a Stoic, this is not just a personal development tip. It is a vital ritual that shapes how they meet the world. From the Stoic view, each day is an inner battle between reason and emotion, initiative and impulse, what is right and what is easy. And just as a general does not enter the battlefield without a plan, the Stoic never enters the day without identifying where their battlefront lies. Intention, as understood by the Stoic, is not merely a goal like finishing a task or working out. It is a direction of the mind. What virtue will I embody today? How will I respond to adversity? Where will I focus my energy to serve what truly matters? Marcus Aurelius, a pillar of this philosophy, often began his day writing reminders to himself that he would encounter the rude, the arrogant, the greedy, that the world would not be gentle. But rather than be shaped by that, he chose calm, compassion, and integrity. By setting a clear intention each morning, he pre-shaped his responses instead of surrendering to impulsive emotion. This practice is not just about controlling behavior. It is a form of psychological readiness. The Stoic understands that the external world lies beyond control. They do not expect things to go smoothly. Instead, they prepare to live in accordance with their values, regardless of the outcome. Importantly, intention need not be grand. It doesn't require sweeping declarations or lofty commitments. In fact, the clearest intentions often stem from the simplest thoughts. Today, I will not let someone's words disturb my peace. Or, Today I will practice patience, starting with listening. Such phrases may be short, but when set mindfully in the morning, they can reshape the rhythm of an entire day. This mindset is rooted in the deep belief that thoughts shape actions and actions shape destiny. One who enters the day without a clear priority is easily swept up in what doesn't matter. They act on emotion, decide without clarity, and move on autopilot. But one who holds a single clear intention has a mental anchor to return to when the mind wavers. In Stoicism, the concept of prohairesis, the faculty of choice, is the seat of human dignity. It is the power to choose how we respond to anything. And setting a daily intention is the most direct expression of prohairesis. When you declare what matters beforehand, you engage reason at its highest level, steering your mind toward what is moral and deliberate. Setting an intention also serves another role. It distinguishes what lies within our control from what does not. Epictetus emphasized, "Some things are up to us, some are not." When someone resolves, "Today I will be honest," they cannot control whether others misunderstand them, but they can control their own actions. That distinction is what gives them peace amid unfairness or confusion. Setting intention does not mean controlling all outcomes of the day. It's not a rigid blueprint. It's a spiritual compass. When things go awry, a sudden event, a hurtful comment, an unexpected failure, the Stoic returns to their intention. They ask, "Does this reaction reflect the person I intend to be today?" That question alone can restore reason. In practice, setting a clear intention doesn't take long. A few quiet minutes in the morning, before the noise of the world intrudes, are ideal. Some write it down, others whisper it to themselves. But what they share is this: it becomes a daily ritual. Through repetition, intention becomes habit, and habit becomes character. When we observe the lives of those who live stoically, we often see steadiness, composure, and calm. Few realize that this steadiness doesn't come from sudden inspiration, but from setting the tone for each day beforehand. Each morning, they renew their intention. They remind themselves, I choose reason. I choose to act on principle. I choose to respond with character." And from there, their days cease to be passive existence. They become directed journeys. Journeys guided not by circumstance, but by inner choice. This is the clearest expression of freedom in Stoic thought. Not doing whatever you want, but doing what is right, with awareness. 3. Train discipline, not to restrict, but to liberate. In Stoic thought, discipline is not a form of punishment or external coercion. It is the deliberate act of reason, a voluntary choice to cultivate mastery over oneself. Discipline does not function as a prison for action, but as the path to true freedom. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher once born into slavery, said, "No one is truly free who is not master of themselves." His words imply that real freedom isn't doing whatever we want, but not being ruled by impulse, temptation, or destructive habits. Freedom is the result of discipline, not its absence. For the Stoic, every disciplined act, no matter how small, contributes to the long journey of building inner strength. It might be waking up on time, resisting procrastination, eating with moderation, keeping promises to oneself, or staying consistent with a beneficial habit. No action is meaningless when performed in service of self-mastery. These choices repeated daily, are the bricks that build character. Discipline in Stoic philosophy doesn't require aesthetic extremes. It does not glorify rejecting comfort or denying joy. Instead, it poses a fundamental question. Does this action serve my moral and rational purpose? If the answer is no, then no matter how tempting, the Stoic chooses not to act. The Stoic practices discipline to create space between impulse and action. In modern life, most people act on instinct, eat when hungry, quit when tired, lash out when angry. But one trained in reason watches those impulses like a vigilant guard, choosing to respond with thought rather than reflex. And the strength to do that can only be gained through disciplined training. A defining feature of Stoic discipline is that it's forged not just in major moments, but in the smallest details of daily life. The Stoic does not wait for crisis to hold the line. They practice steadiness in the ordinary, maintaining a good habit, measuring their words, or staying focused amidst distraction. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, still kept a daily journal to examine his thoughts. Though wielding immense power, he chose restraint to preserve clarity of mind. His refusal to let emotion override reason is proof that discipline is not about status or situation, but a conscious choice, renewed each day. Discipline also acts as a shield for the mind against destructive emotions. When one disciplines their speech, they avoid saying things they'll regret. When they discipline consumption, they aren't enslaved by desire. When they discipline their thoughts, they resist spirals of negativity, blame, or resentment. In this light, discipline is not limitation. It is a proactive defense for inner peace. The core of Stoic discipline lies in consistency. An action may be simple, but without steady practice, it yields no lasting change. Thus, the Stoic doesn't aim for daily perfection. They commit to staying aligned with themselves, no matter the day's mood or conditions. Whether easy or difficult, they still choose right action. Discipline becomes the bridge between wise intention and steady behavior. Curiously, discipline is not separate from other virtues in Stoic philosophy. It is the foundation for practicing courage, integrity, and self-control. One may wish to be kind, generous, and calm, but without the discipline to master one's emotions and conduct, those values cannot manifest. Therefore, to the Stoic, discipline is not the goal, it is the tool, a tool to live with reason and virtue. Discipline is also tied to an awareness of time. The Stoic reminds us that every moment is precious. It cannot be bought back, borrowed, or lived by another on your behalf. For that reason, wasting time on the trivial, chasing fleeting pleasures, or delaying what matters, all run counter to discipline. Instead, they choose to manage time by living with intention and valuing what truly counts. In the end, the Stoic sees discipline not as something lofty or remote. To them, it is a skill, one that can be learned, practiced, and improved each day. They understand that no one is born with unshakable discipline, but anyone can build it through perseverance. Each small step, each right action, each moment of resisting temptation, all contribute to shaping a resolute mind and a life with direction. 4. Silence as mastery of the inner life. In the modern world, where notifications ping every minute, where conversations unfold across multiple platforms, where noise comes not only from the environment, but also from within the mind, silence has become a rare asset. For the Stoic practitioner, Silence is not the absence of sound, but the full presence of awareness. Stoic philosophy does not glorify silence for its own sake. It values purposeful silence, silence that is chosen not out of lack, but out of recognition for the power of restraint. That silence is the ground for deep thought, the space where reason can operate unclouded by emotion. It opens room to observe the inner world, to choose a response instead of reacting by impulse. Epictetus once taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more than speak. This applies not only in conversation, but also in the dialogue within ourselves. The Stoic uses silence as a tool to see clearly the stream of thoughts moving through the mind. In that stillness, they discern what is false, exaggerated, or impulsive. And from that clarity, they choose what is right over what is easy. The silence of mourning, even if only a few minutes long, is seen as a chance to reset the mind. Before the world fills the head with distractions, the Stoic intentionally create a wordless space, a mental pause where they reconnect with themselves. No music, no news, no conversations, just the pure stillness of the inner world. In that space, the mind is not swept away by unconscious reflex, but returns to essential questions. How will I live today? How will I face difficulty? How calm can I remain? Silence is also a sign of inner strength. In moments of provocation, insult, or misunderstanding, the instinct is to speak, to argue, to explain, to lash out. But for the Stoic, remaining silent in such moments is not weakness. It is high-level mental discipline. They understand that words spoken in anger may carry lasting harm. In such cases, silence is the act of one who has transcended the need to defend the ego. Marcus Aurelius, as Emperor of Rome, faced constant criticism and pressure. Yet in his writings, there is no sign that he used power to silence dissent. Instead, he chose to observe, reflect, and act with reason. That is silence joined with wisdom, not avoidance, but emotional governance at its core. Silence is practiced not only in conversation with others, but also in the way we respond to ourselves. The human mind is often filled with inner chatter, self-criticism, judgment, anxiety, or negative fantasy. The Stoic uses silence to cut through that spiral, to halt the uncontrolled stream of thought. They create a pause where the mind can be reset, refreshed, and brought back into balance. An essential part of this practice is intentionality. Silence does not arise naturally in today's world. It must be created by stepping away from noise, setting boundaries with technology, and developing the habit of listening to oneself before listening to others. The Stoic does not wait for silence to happen. They guard it as a ritual, as a sanctuary for training reason. Silence is also the precondition for intentional action. When one takes the time not to react immediately, they grant themselves the space to consider, is this action right? Is it appropriate? Is it necessary? That pause, the gap between stimulus and response, is the space where freedom is born. In Stoic philosophy, it is the clearest sign of living by reason rather than by emotion. Beyond personal benefit, silence is also a tool for cultivating healthy relationships. In conversation, listening with respectful silence is an act of empathy. The Stoic understands that debate, rebuttal, or the desire to win a dialogue rarely serves a moral aim. Instead, selective silence allows them to listen in order to understand, not simply to reply. Silence, when practiced rightly, nurtures full presence in the moment. One no longer distracted by outer noise or inner turbulence, one begins to notice the beauty of the present, a beam of light through the window, the sound of birds, the rhythm of breath. These things are always there, but often overlooked. Silence brings us back to reality, and reality is the foundation of Stoic practice. Ultimately, the Stoic sees silence not as passivity, but as actions at the deepest level. They are silent not to withdraw, but to prepare, not to surrender, but to fortify the self. Each silent moment is an opportunity to reconnect with one's essence, to recalibrate one's direction, and to reinforce moral choice in a world full of noise. 5. To place oneself in service. In Stoic philosophy, a person is not an isolated being, but part of a greater whole: community, society, humanity. To place oneself in service is not merely a moral act, but a choice to live in accordance with human nature. The Stoic understands that when one part of the body works only for itself, neglecting the whole, the body becomes diseased. Likewise, one who lives solely for themselves, indifferent to others, forfeits inner harmony. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Humans are made to cooperate, like two hands, 2 feet, 2 eyelids." From this view, service is not an obligation, but a natural expression of a healthy soul. The Stoic does not serve to be seen, nor give to receive, but acts out of the understanding that living to gratify the ego alone now leads to unrest and suffering. Service, in the Stoic sense, does not demand grand gestures or heroic sacrifice. On the contrary, it is most visible in the small, ordinary acts: listening to someone in pain, yielding the right of way, keeping a promise, or refraining from words that may wound. These seemingly minor choices reflect a mind that has risen above self-interest and aligned with the common good. Epictetus once said, "Our duty is to perform well the role life assigns us, whatever that may be." As a parent, that means care and guidance. As a worker, honesty and dedication. As a citizen, respect for the law and contribution to society. No role is more noble than another, only the question of whether one fulfills it with integrity. Service is not limited by status or circumstance. The poor can serve through kindness. The busy can serve by honoring their word. Even the suffering can serve by refusing to pass their pain on to others. For the Stoic, service is the act of a mind that governs itself and lives for something greater than ego. One of the deeper benefits of service is its ability to pull the self out of its own vortex. A person consumed by what they lack, fear, or desire becomes fragile in the face of adversity. Every obstacle becomes cause for resentment. But when attention shifts outward, toward helping, uplifting, or simply not disturbing, each act takes on deeper meaning and affirms one's connection to life. Service, in the Stoic sense, is not passive endurance or denial of self. It is not the sacrifice of everything for others while neglecting the self. The Stoic understands that one must first cultivate inner strength before they can serve effectively. One who cannot master themselves cannot be a foundation for others. Thus, service is not in conflict with personal discipline. It is its natural extension into the world. The story of Anthony Ray Hinton, wrongly imprisoned for nearly 30 years, is often cited in Stoic circles. In confinement, he chose not to hate. He read, helped fellow inmates, and preserved his compassion. Upon release, he sought not revenge, but to aid others who had been wrongfully convicted. His life is a living example of Stoic service amidst injustice, choosing goodness and right action, even as a victim of great wrong. To the Stoic, service is not limited to actions, but also revealed in one's attitude. A look of empathy, a timely word, a quiet deed done without audience, all are acts of service. Conversely, every careless, unreflective action that harms another, even unintentionally, signals a mind still untrained. What matters is that service be given without the need for recognition. The Stoic is not attached to outcomes. They give not for praise, not for approval, but because the act aligns with the moral fabric they have chosen to live by. This is the essence of unconditional altruism, a virtue difficult to master, but once internalized, it becomes an enduring source of strength. In today's world, where individualism is often elevated to excess, choosing to live for others may be seen as weakness or loss. But the Stoic does not measure action by public sentiment. They use another standard, the standard of virtue, of duty, of what is right. Even an unseen act, if done for a purpose beyond the self, holds value equal to the grandest deed. In short, to place oneself in service is not just a moral lifestyle in Stoicism. It is a profound strategy to transcend the ego, to protect inner peace, and to live in harmony with others. The Stoic does not view service as a passing choice, but as the steady state of a mature mind. 6. Humility, not bowing the head, but standing firm. In Stoic philosophy, humility is not defined as self-deprecation or denial of personal ability. Rather, it is seen as a clear understanding of one's place in the world, a recognition of one's limits without losing sight of intrinsic worth. The humble person does not deny what they possess, but neither do they exaggerate it. They remain steady amid both praise and criticism, because their value is not measured by the eyes of others. Stoicism teaches that everything we take pride in, talent, status, wealth, accomplishments, is fleeting and easily lost. Epictetus emphasized that we do not control externals like health, reputation, or recognition. These things come and go, regardless of our will. Therefore, humility is an expression of wisdom. It is the acceptance that we are neither omnipotent nor invincible. That humility grounds us in reality, keeps us calm, and protects us from the illusions of ego. The Stoic practitioner does not boast about achievements, for they know that achievement does not define character. How one lives, acts, and responds to adversity reveals true virtue. In success, they remain composed. In failure, they do not lose self-respect. This is because they understand that real value lies not in outer outcomes, but in the ability to remain anchored in inner principles. Historically, Marcus Aurelius stands as a prime example of humility and power. Though Emperor of Rome, he took time to write personal reflections that reminded him of the impermanence of glory and the danger of pride. He did not let rank distort his self-perception. His humility was not spoken, but practiced through his willingness to accept criticism, to listen, and to change when reason called for it. This shows that humility does not weaken a person. It makes them adaptable, mature, and enduring. In today's world, where self-promotion and personal image are often celebrated, the stoically humble stand out, not by making noise, but by remaining composed in chaos, steady through change, and untouched by the constant need to outshine. They are unmoved by recognition or rejection, because their strength does not come from the outside, Humility is also the foundation for learning and growth. One who believes they already know enough will stop seeking truth. But the humble know that everyone has something to teach, and every situation holds a lesson. So they keep the mind open, not because they lack value, but because they understand wisdom is boundless and must be cultivated continuously. Practicing humility also safeguards integrity. When a person is not driven by the urge to impress or score approval, they act from principle, not applause. They can speak truth even when it's unpopular, admit fault when wrong, and stand alone when necessary. Humility allows them to uphold internal standards rather than follow shifting social norms. In relationships, humility fosters genuine connection. The humble do not impose opinions, seek to be right, or control others. They listen, respect difference, and do not force dominance. That attitude makes them trustworthy, not because they demand it, but because they show up with kindness and honesty. A core teaching of Stoicism is that acknowledging our limits is not surrender, it is clarity, allowing us to focus on what we can control. The humble recognize that they cannot do everything and do not waste energy on what lies beyond their reach. They are not obsessed with how others see them, but turn inward to build true stability. This humility is also seen in the Stoic attitude toward time and mortality. Stoics often reflect on death, not as pessimism, but to foster a focused way of living. When one sees that all achievements and honors will pass, they begin to live more simply, more sincerely, and more humbly. Unlike low self-esteem, which stems from an absence of self-worth, humility arises from deep self-knowledge. The humble do not need praise to feel whole, nor superiority to feel secure. They understand that inner strength needs no proof. And from that steadiness, they live lightly but with great impact. In sum, humility in the Stoic sense is not bowing before others or abandoning self-worth. On the contrary, it is the mark of a fortified mind, one that knows its limits, what is worth pursuing, and what is best left behind. The humble do not live to be seen, but to live rightly. They do not seek outward light, for the inner light is what they have spent a lifetime cultivating. 7. Face fear, don't flee it. In Stoic philosophy, fear is not seen as an enemy to eliminate, but as a signal to observe and understand. The Stoic neither ignores fear nor allows it to dictate behavior. Instead, they choose to face it directly as an essential part of the mind's maturation. Avoiding fear only allows it to grow in the dark. But once brought into the light, named and examined, fear loses much of its power. Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Fear often doesn't arise from present reality, but from imagined scenarios, the things that haven't happened, yet have been exaggerated by the mind into confusion and anxiety. Therefore, the first step in facing fear is identifying its source. Is it reality or assumption? The Stoic applies reason to distinguish what is real from what is imagined. They ask, what's the worst that could happen? Could I endure it? This question isn't pessimistic. It's a test of inner resilience and a way to assess the situation objectively. Often, when fear is examined through the lens of reason, it becomes clearer and more manageable. In practice, fear keeps people in their comfort zones, holding them back, causing them to decline opportunities, delay decisions, and limit their potential. The Stoic does not deny the comfort zone exists, but they do not see it as a place to remain. Growth, by nature, requires stepping beyond the familiar and embracing uncertainty. Facing fear does not mean reckless or defiant action. In Stoic thought, it's a deliberate process, guided by reflection and emotional control. The Stoic does not seek danger to prove bravery. They choose to confront what they avoid, mindfully, in order to expand their inner boundaries. Each time a fear is faced, no matter how small, one becomes stronger, steadier, and freer. Stoicism sees fear as an opportunity to cultivate courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to do what is right, despite fear. When someone feels afraid, yet still chooses to speak truth, defend justice, or walk into uncertainty, those are the moments when virtue is forged most deeply. In the writings of Marcus Aurelius, he continually reminded himself of life's impermanence, of death, and of what lies beyond his control. But he did not let these reflections lead to despair. Instead, he used them to prepare his mind, to become familiar with the inevitable. By facing the fear of death, the root of many negative emotions, he learned to cherish the present and act with purpose in every moment. Another Stoic principle in facing fear is not allowing emotions to cloud perception. The Stoic trains calmness by observing emotions without reacting instantly. When fear arises, they don't flee, but pause to inquire. Where is this coming from? Is it rational? Is it useful to my actions? This separation between emotion and behavior is what allows them to maintain reason under pressure. Fear is also a test of character. Many times, the failure to speak truth, to act justly, or to hold to one's principles stems from fear of loss, rejection, or harm. The Stoic knows that if fear controls their actions, they're trading inner freedom for fleeting comfort. Thus, living by values, even when risky, is more important to them than temporary ease. Another vital practice is preparing the mind in advance for hardship. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This isn't pessimism, but a form of mental training that reduces the shock of the unexpected. By contemplating difficult scenarios ahead of time, the mind builds familiarity and resilience. When adversity does arrive, the prepared are less shaken and more capable of wise response. Beyond the personal, Stoicism also teaches not to spread fear to others. One who governs their mind does not speak, act, or posture in ways that stir unnecessary anxiety. They choose to transmit calm, because shared calm is the foundation for a healthy community, one where people feel safe enough to live by their highest values. In the end, fear is not the enemy, but it becomes a tyrant if never confronted. The Stoic chooses to walk straight into their darkness, not to be consumed by it, but to find the light of truth. Through reason, through observation, through courage, despite trembling hands, they slowly dissolve fear to reclaim inner freedom. Every fear overcome is a step closer to unconditional peace, a peace that no external condition can take away. 8. Speak to yourself in words that strengthen. One of the core principles of Stoicism is that people are not harmed by external events, but by how they interpret those events. Language, both in how we speak aloud and, more critically, how we speak to ourselves, plays a key role in shaping our lived experience. What we repeat in our minds, even silently, gradually forms our attitudes, emotions, and actions. From a Stoic perspective, each person is the narrator of their own life. and the narrator uses language as a tool to interpret, evaluate, respond, and direct the mind. When people speak to themselves with criticism, judgment, self-contempt, or despair, the mind believes it. But when they use words that are accurate, calm, rational, and constructive, the mind is steadied, uplifted, and led toward right action. Marcus Aurelius, in his personal writings, often reaffirmed moral principles through short, concise statements like, "Do what is right. Don't worry if no one notices," or, "Today, I will meet the arrogant, the selfish, the treacherous, but they are human like me." These words weren't meant for others. They were reminders to himself. They are a clear example of Stoic self-talk in action. Language is not only a way to express thought, but also a way to shape thought. The Stoic uses intentional speech to guide the mind toward virtue. For example, instead of saying, "I can't take this anymore," they might say, "This is a chance to practice patience." Instead of, "Everything is against me," they ask, "What's within my control right now?" This shift in language creates a fundamental change in perception and behavior. Speaking to oneself with strengthening words doesn't mean denying reality or sugarcoating circumstances. The Stoic does not use language to avoid truth. They acknowledge suffering, injustice, and limitation, but choose not to respond with complaint, blame, or negativity. They reframe reality in a constructive way, not to escape it, but to act effectively within it. This practice requires mindfulness. Throughout the day, the mind generates thousands of thoughts, many of them automatic, reactive, and shaped by habit or surroundings. The Stoic trains the ability to observe internal speech, to recognize when it's destructive, and to redirect it toward words that reinforce clarity. This is a skill that takes persistence and repetition, but it is foundational for maintaining composure and lucidity. Beyond inner speech, the Stoic is also careful with spoken words. They understand that language can generate emotion, not only for the listener, but for the speaker. A sentence uttered in anger can prolong a state of rage. A complaint can deepen a sense of helplessness. But a single word of encouragement, however simple, can help the mind find footing during adversity. The Stoic uses mantras, affirmations, or philosophical reminders as tools to realign their internal compass. They might begin the day with an intention, "Today, I will live by reason," or recall a principle when challenged, "Only what's within my control deserves my concern." These aren't slogans. They're structured awareness, made verbal, shaping the mind's response to reality. Strengthening words need not be inspirational slogans. Often, it is simplicity and honesty that hold the most power. A sentence like, "I can endure this," spoken with awareness, can help someone navigate hardship without being consumed by panic. When repeated often enough, such words become an internal map, guiding one through outer chaos. What sustains this method is purposeful repetition. The Stoic doesn't use strengthening words only in moments of crisis. They build it into their way of living. Just as the body is strengthened through daily exercise, the mind is strengthened through repeated right speech until it becomes instinctive in all circumstances. Moreover, speaking to oneself with care is a form of self-respect. When someone values themselves, they do not allow self-abuse, even in thought. They do not let the mind become a chamber of insults, self-doubt, or internal contempt. Instead, they build a secure inner world where reason leads, words are chosen carefully, and each sentence points toward growth. In sum, speaking to oneself with strengthening language is a form of intellectual discipline in Stoic practice. It not only helps one overcome negative emotion, but reinforces inner values, guides ethical action, and sustains stability amid change. In a world where many allow thought to carry them away, the Stoic chooses to speak, not loudly, but to shape the mind from within. 9. Remember why you began. In the journey of living and training the mind in the spirit of Stoicism, one principle is often repeated: always return to your original purpose. This is not an emotional gesture, but a mental strategy to stay on course during difficult moments, when emotions waver, or when one starts being pulled by secondary goals. To the Stoic, the reason for beginning is not just initial motivation. It is the deep source of intentional action. It is an inner commitment, the force that led them to pursue a life of virtue, self-mastery, and reason. When faced with fatigue, procrastination, disappointment, or temptation, they don't seek a new spark. They return to the old one, the reason that first set them on this path. Remembering the original reason acts as a mental anchor. In a constantly shifting world, where people are swayed by social pressure, others' expectations, or passing trends, staying consistent is a challenge. The Stoic cultivates the habit of asking, "What am I doing this for? What value am I living by?" That question helps them distinguish the essential from the superfluous, the real from the imagined. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled a vast empire and endured betrayal, attack, and misunderstanding, still made time each day to write to himself, reaffirming the principles he had vowed to follow. He did not let power or success eclipse his first reason: to live rationally, to act justly, and to preserve a clean soul. His steadiness didn't come from inspiration, but from consistently returning to the root of his will. The Stoic knows that emotions will not always support right action. There are days when one feels exhausted, lost, or doubtful. In such moments, relying on feeling alone leads to retreat. But by recalling their reason, one tied to deep values and the aspiration to live virtuously, they gain a layer of defense against surrender. Remembering the beginning also protects against distraction. On a long path, it's easy to drift towards seemingly important things, short-term rewards, others' approval, or fleeting satisfaction. The Stoic maintains focus by looking beyond immediate outcomes. They remind themselves that right action is pursued not for instant reward, but because it is right. This practice is not just internal, it takes visible form in action. The Stoic may start the day by rereading a quote, writing a commitment to live by reason, or restating a chosen ethical principle. This repeated ritual strengthens the bond between purpose and daily conduct. In Stoic philosophy, the original reason is rarely rooted in personal ambition, but in the desire to live in harmony with nature, with community, and with reason. It might be the wish to become a better person, a more upright citizen, or simply to avoid being mentally defeated by difficult circumstances. Thus, returning to one's purpose is not just for motivation, but to preserve the soul from being reshaped by externals. Another aspect of this practice is its role in reassessing the present path. When one feels off track, instead of sinking into guilt or discouragement, they can ask, What have I strayed from? What values have I neglected? What must be corrected? This reflection is not a call to start over, but to walk forward with greater accuracy. The Stoics also warn against tying one's purpose to things beyond control, such as material success, admiration, or outcomes. These change with time and fortune. If your reason is outcome dependent, failure will breed disappointment and abandonment. Instead, the most enduring reason is one tied to moral growth and right living, regardless of who sees it. When a person stays connected to a meaningful reason, they become less shaken by failure. Failure is no longer a sign of inadequacy, but a natural part of training. Resilience doesn't come from never falling, but from always returning to a fixed internal compass. And a clear, purposeful beginning, if truly understood, becomes a refuge of strength in times of trial. In short, remembering why you began is not just an inspirational act, it is a strategic Stoic practice. It helps preserve direction in chaos, sustain commitment through change, and anchor right action, regardless of result. On the path of reason and virtue, you don't always need to feel strong, but you must always remember what you're living for. If there's one thing I've learned after years of studying Stoicism, it's this: no one can live rationally without daily practice. There is no single moment of enlightenment that turns us into calm, strong, and wise individuals forever. Instead, we repeat small actions, and it is those repeated actions that build true inner strength. Each morning, I begin not by checking my phone, but by sitting in silence for a few minutes. I breathe slowly and remind myself, today, I will live by my values, not my emotions. These simple words, when repeated, slowly become part of how I respond to the world. When I feel anger, instead of reacting with sharp words, I've learned to pause. When disappointment strikes, I no longer blame. I ask, what in this situation is within my control? And when I feel exhausted, I don't quit. I return to the reason I chose this path in the first place. Stoicism is not abstract theory. For me, it's a map for living, a way to stay upright under pressure, to avoid being pulled off course by the trivial, and to remember what truly matters. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to remind ourselves each day and keep going, one step, one choice, one morning at a time. If something you just heard resonated within you, a part that's longing for calm, discipline, and direction, don't let it be just a passing feeling. Start with one small action, tomorrow. And if you want to walk this path together, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future reflections. Because in the end, life waits for no one to awaken. It rewards those who dare to live with intention. See you in the next video.